There are levels to everything. And if you're the top level looking down, everything's going to look a little bit different. But when you match up with somebody who's levels ahead and you have to look up at them, that's where true humility is. And that's where you can learn anyway.
Are you putting yourself in environments where you're not the best? Because you need to do that. You need to do that to grow. I honestly, you have to. There's no way to maximize your potential without doing that.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1053, last week's live Q&A. Where is the boundary between vulnerability and oversharing? Today, for episode number 1054, happy Friday. Are you the big fish in your small pond? Happy Friday. Yeah.
Happy Friday. I just noticed you're wearing the Next Level Hope Foundation shirt.
Hey,
Next Level Hope Foundation.
The future is next level, as they say.
As they say?
That's
what it says on the back, right?
It does. If I flip around, everything might go all over the place if I do that.
Oh, don't even worry about it.
Yeah. So, Alan, we're going to do an episode today.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about fish and ponds. Something we talk about quite often on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking, so again, Alan and I are doing a lot of episodes in advance because I'm on the road, technically. If you're listening to this, I'm in Colorado. So a lot of these, I had to come up with like 15 thoughts for episodes in a 1 week span of time. So I've really been racking my brain on what to talk about. I remember, Alan, and you'll probably remember this because you were working out with me at this point, but when I first started working out, I was working out at it was a pretty small gym in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. And even when I was very young, I tended to be one of the stronger and or more aesthetic people in the gym. I'm very blessed with good genetics, and I had very, very hard work ethic. If you fast forward a little bit, that gym ended up moving to another spot, and I ended up going to the Anytime Fitness that they built in Uxbridge, Massachusetts, the one that Alan still goes to most of the time, right? That's the gym you go to?
Yeah. It's 2 minutes down the road.
Yeah. Basically, the entire time I was there, I was in probably the best shape. I mean, if you thought of, at any given time, if you said, hey, who is in the best shape at this gym? If I was there, it was probably me. Not because I was in the best shape. There just wasn't a lot of people that went to that gym who took bodybuilding seriously, right?
For sure.
And I didn't have my buddy Matt was in shape, but other than that, there weren't a lot of people that I surrounded myself with that were in shape.
And then Nate, one of the trainers there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so if you fast forward, I end up going to other gyms, and again, I'm usually the top 1 to 5% of people in the gym. Eventually, I start training for a bodybuilding show. And one of the reasons I trained for a bodybuilding show is because I was already in pretty good shape compared to most people in the gym. But I started working out with my trainer. And my trainer is a professional bodybuilder. He is like 5'3", and I think he weighs like 220 pounds or something. He's like a little meatball, but he's jacked, like unreasonably jacked. And I remember the first time I went and did legs with him, I was like, this is a completely different thing we're doing today. He does legs until he throws up. That's just like a common thing for him. It's like, if you don't puke at the end of your leg session, you're not doing it right. It's like, oh no, we are in big trouble here.
Yeah. I gotta go. I think I'm sick. I gotta go. Yeah.
And I worked out with him a couple times, and it was always wonderful. And he was super motivational, and he would push me beyond what I thought was capable. But it made me realize that for most of my life, I had been the big fish in the small pond. If you're working out at a town gym that is catered to people who want to do cardio or, just get their blood flowing, and nothing against that, and you're somebody in there who's squatting heavy and deadlifting and doing all those exercises, and you're dieting, odds are you're going to be in better shape than many of the people there. That was a very interesting realization for me. Now, luckily for me, I had the confidence at the time to say, okay, this is a great learning experience. I'm around somebody who is way stronger than me, looks way better than I do, and knows way more about all this. than I do, and that's awesome. But do you know why he's way ahead of me? Because when he works out with other people, he works out with people way ahead of him. Some of the best in the world he's worked out with, like people on the Olympia stage, Alan. And the Olympia is like the biggest bodybuilding show in the world. So he might be the big
For
fish.
reference for our listeners, it would be like the Arnold Schwarzeneggers of the world.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, Arnold is the most famous for that.
Yeah, 100%. So with me, he is the big fish in the small pond, right? If he's working out with me, he's way ahead of me. He is the master. But when he goes and trains with the people he trains with, he's the small fish again. And it's very important to ask yourself that question. Are you the best in every group you're in? Because if so, it might feel really good, but you are leaving a ton of progress, a ton of opportunity, a ton of humility, a ton of learning on the table. And we're not just talking about fitness. This is anything. If you're the only person in your friend group who is an entrepreneur, it's probably doing you a disservice, because everybody's probably like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you have your own business, and you're becoming the big fish in that small pond. Hello, buddy.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating, Kev, because, I think all of us are simultaneously the big fish and the small fish, depending on who we're comparing to. And this comes down to a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And we've talked a lot about this in depth, but I like to be humbled by, I remember when I first started working out with you and Matt, that was really good for me, because I was a big fish in a small pond, and now I became the small fish. And then when you're the small fish, you can learn and you can grow more. There's a lot of different examples that I can think of, but one that jumps off the page that was really, I would call this actual culture shock, or maybe we'll call it identity shock. Maybe that's something we can coin at NLU, because I think that identity shock happens when Kev is working out with that person, and most people, if they threw up, they would skip their workout. I'm sick, I can't go to the gym, and this guy's like, puking is like a normal part of working out. Yeah. So the biggest identity shock I think I've ever had in my entire life. And by the way, if you've never heard the story about Kevin and I both decided to go to a Brendan Burchard event, High Performance Academy. This is back in the tail end of 2018. And Kevin didn't think he was going to be able to even relate, or didn't even want to go, was scared to go. I thought that I was a strong speaker. Essentially, that was my identity. I'm a strong speaker. Kevin was, I suck, I can't even show up. Obviously, paraphrasing here.
No, that was accurate.
And okay, fair enough. So we got there, and it ended up being this awesome event, but I saw Brendan Burchard speak, and he's been speaking for well over a decade at this point, 15, 20 years, and he's world class, unbelievable speaker. And so I got to see him live and was like, oh, God, I'm not even close. So I got that identity shock of like humble pie of I was just a good speaker at my old college or my small town or whatever in this analogy. And then Kevin was like ahead of a lot of the people that he thought he was going to be so far behind in many ways when it comes to growth and dreams and goals and all that kind of stuff. So that's another big fish, small pond thing, and identity shock here. So sometimes you are the small fish in the big pond. Sometimes you're the big fish in the small pond. It's important to be aware of it, and I think that's really the through line. But the biggest identity shock I ever had, Kev, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. So in high school, Uxbridge High, back when Kevin and I were at Uxbridge High, we were losing our accreditation, which apparently is a really negative thing, which means essentially the school is not up to spec in terms of it. We're not even sure if we can consider this an actual high school type of thing, right? And so...
What do you think it was, Alan? Do you think it was the several teachers that were sleeping with students, or the fact that we didn't have air conditioning, or the fact that we had many of our classrooms in the basement? Do you think it was any of those things?
I think it might have been several of those things.
Anything particular? Yeah. Okay.
It is interesting to look back on, Kev, because Emilia and I, and we had never intended on this, so this was not by design, but the condo we found that we loved, that had all the things that she wanted and I wanted. And by the way, the things I wanted was an office, good Wi-Fi, and I think privacy or something like that. she had like a lot of things, skylight, all kinds of stuff. And we ended up finding a condo in Uxbridge where Kevin and I grew up. And it's a beautiful condo complex. So I'm so grateful, but I'm still in this town, right? So I went back to the middle school recently, Kev, and just this town is just a small town. It's just a really small town of Uxbridge, Mass. So anyone out there listening to this show, you're probably going to hear more about Uxbridge than anyone ever has or wants to. You know what I mean? But anyways, so it's Uxbridge High School, and they're in the process of trying to approve a new school. And since then, the new school has been built. I'm actually going to run on the track this weekend. It's a beautiful track. The other high school, Kevin and I's high school, never even had a track. But anyways, so we're losing our accreditation, and I've told the story many times. My goal was to get the President's Award, which was essentially get straight A's in high school. You can't get any B's. You have to get above a 95 or above GPA out of 100 in all report cards. So 4 report cards per year, 4 years, 16 report cards straight. You cannot get below a 95, which was just brutal, really, especially when you want to have a social life and you want to have fun and friends and all that kind of stuff. And especially when you grow up in a household that has a fun, pleasure-centered paradigm and an older sister who likes to party. But anyways, so so getting A's in high school, while it was challenging, I gotta say academics always came very easy to me. I consider myself a pretty intelligent person. When I got to WPI, man, I went from like the smart kid, like who just everything came easy to. I remember one of the top tiers in our class. I graduated at the top of our class as well. She was a close friend of mine, and she said, "Alan, it pisses me off. You can do 1/10 of the work and get the same grade." And that's always been a through line for me too. And I don't recommend putting in minimal effort just because you're smart. I think I rested on talent, and I really think I squandered a lot of potential. But when I got to WPI, Kev, the first physics course I took, okay, I got the physics award in high school. I think it might even be behind me. So I won the award for best in physics at Uxbridge High. In 2 freaking weeks, we went through all of what I knew. Literally, right? And so Mr. Tansen, do you remember Mr. Tansen? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So Mr. Tansen taught physics, and I was the #1 physics guy. Awesome. Go Alan, right? I get to WPI, and I'm like, oh, no. All of what I know is done now, and it's 2 classes in, right? So WPI, for those of you who are new listeners, it's like a mini MIT. It's essentially one of the best tech schools in the world. And I had to work my butt off to try to get there, financial aid, scholarships, all that stuff. But picture taking and I'm just going to say this too. I mean, it's the nerdiest school ever, like ever, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way because I love nerds and I'm a nerd. But you go from Uxbridge High, one of the smart kids, to like now take the entire planet of students from all over the globe, all different countries, all different cultures, and find the smartest ones in math and science and put them all in one effing school. So you want to talk about identity shock. I went from the smart kid to like, I know how to party. You know, like that's my new value here. And obviously I'm being playful because of course I was still smart there, but, and luckily I had work ethic. But that's the big fish in small pond. In Uxbridge High, I was a big fish in a small pond. And then, Kev, I'll tell you this story as well. So I went back to visit UHS my junior year in college. And hopefully there's some lessons in this for everybody. I remember walking those halls, and I went and visited Mrs. Pryor. And I remember being like blown away at how much I grew in comparison to that school. When I went to WPI, and I want to say this, it was brutal. And we have someone on our team who went to Harvard as well, and he had some massive culture shock too, because he went from like the smart kid to like, I'm not at all, right? And when I went back to the high school, I remember thinking like, and this is the benefit of actually being the small fish. I went from big fish, small pond, Uxbridge High, to WPI, small fish in massive ocean. And again, it's still not the ocean. I think the world is technically the ocean in this analogy. And then I went back to the high school to visit one of my favorite teachers. And I was like, and this is going to sound a little bit arrogant, probably. So I want to be direct with people. I'm now the big fish. I knew that. I could tell. Like I'm more aware than anyone in this building, maybe. And I know that's obviously probably exaggerated, but the point is this: when you do go through the pain and discomfort of getting that far outside your comfort zone, and you stay there and you can survive there, and that's really what it was at the beginning for me, was survival, just like what you've talked about with the David Meltzers and all that stuff, this podcast journey. When you go back, it's like, oh, wow, I'm like way ahead of where I thought. And now you are the big fish in the small pond, and that's been really fascinating. My favorite part of this journey, Kev, is always going to be reminiscing on going back.
Yeah.
Like when I went back to the middle school, and I just remember looking in that cafeteria, because they have a basketball court in the back, and I remember thinking, like, listening to Eminem in the dance. We used to have school dances there, and I was just like, wow, this is like a little tiny room. I remember this used to be like a big deal, right? So hopefully there's some lessons in that for people, but you are a little fish in a big pond in many ways, and then you're also probably a big fish in some little ponds. And I think the question is, are you putting yourself in environments where you're not the best? Because you need to do that. You need to do that to grow. I honestly, you have to. There's no way to maximize your potential without doing that.
Hey guys, it's Ramos, and I am happy that I was in group coaching for a second time. It definitely helps to have accountability and all of that good stuff. I feel like I am constantly going up and down and everything, but it's always good to have someone message on WhatsApp and then a reminder, hey, get back on it. So it was good. I definitely got a lot of good information that I'm going to continue learning because I am a little backed up, but I'm happy that I invested in this because it was investing in me. And even better, I get to meet people that are doing the same exact thing to help themselves. And I need friends and close people around me like that, So yeah, I really appreciated being in group coaching because of the accountability and because of meeting people.
This is why action is so important. This is 100% why action is so important. And we'll hop off after this because we do have time constraints. But I remember growing up, I was always one of the best fighters, quote unquote, not like, hand-to-hand combat, but wrestling, submission. I was always one of the better people in my friend group. That was always a thing. Like there was a running joke in high school. I remember I had a conversation with two of the toughest kids in our grade who I was afraid of. And they were like, oh, I would never fight you because you'd kill me. It's like, what are you talking about, man? First of all, I didn't even know you knew I existed, number one. And number two, not going to happen. But when I went and started training martial arts, I remember my instructor was one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the country. And I remember one time he's like, hey, do you want to roll? And all roll is, it's kind of like spar. We're gonna do a match together, but it's just play. It's practice. And I was like, yeah, okay. And when I tell you he could have done anything he wanted with me, and I could have done nothing about it. Like he was using like one arm. And he was just spinning me around on his feet. It was like a scene from a cartoon. You want to talk about, being a big fish in a small pond, going to a minnow and a shark. That's exactly what that was. But that's what humility is. That's where humility comes from. And it's like, okay, there are levels to everything. And if you're the top level looking down, everything's going to look a little bit different. But when you match up with somebody who's levels ahead and you have to look up at them, that's where true humility is. And that's where you can learn anyway. If you're the big fish in the small pond, there's only so much for you to learn there. You're really getting perspective. You're not necessarily getting lessons anymore.
I know. This is a mirror for me too, because I do feel like Kevin and I, in the beginning of the podcast journey, we were around mostly people ahead of us.
For sure.
And I don't think that that's true as much as it used to for many reasons. And I'm grateful I had so many mentors and multimillionaires and really wealthy business owners and all that kind of stuff. But one thing I will share too, and this is interesting, it gets, sometimes when you stay in an arena long enough, 1,050 episodes or whatever, and again, this is not, Kevin and I are so great or any of that, but it's not easy to get a hold of, Tom Bilyeu or Brendan Burchard or Tony Robbins or Dean Graziosi, and the people that are ahead of us at this stage in terms of who we could learn from. It's very difficult. We're in this weird chasm where
it's less than it's ever been.
Yeah, we're not successful enough, quote unquote, yet to like be peers with those people, but yet we're also like the people that we can be peers with. It's like we're way ahead of in some ways, and again, ahead of this is, we're talking in terms of craft, right? In terms of the craft, but for the listeners, I want you all thinking about, where are you, plus minus equal to? We did an episode on that a while ago. You need to have some people way, way, way ahead of you for the humble pie and for the lessons and for the learning and for the guidance. And then equal to peak performance partners, growth partners, like, you spot me, I spot you. And then you've got to have some people who you guide and who you mentor so that you can gain the full perspective. Because if you're looking up directly in front of you and down, in terms of this analogy, now you can see the whole picture. It's very hard, because if you only surround yourself with people, I have one person, I'll share this, I know we got to go. I have one person in my life in the past that just, I swear, this person, it's not conscious, but they constantly surround themselves with people way worse than them. And I know it's so they can feel good on some level. And I'm not a huge fan of this person, but whatever. I think that there's some truth to people who have a fixed mindset purposely surround themselves with people who are worse than them or seem worse than them so that they get to feel good about themselves. But it's based on a false reality. And there's a lot of science behind this in Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. She talks about how if you want to continue believing that you're great, you will literally avoid looking in any mirrors that tell you you're not. And so I can think I'm really strong until I work out with Kev, and then I'll realize I'm not that strong. And that's good for me. I like that humble pie. I told Emilia after that soccer match we had where it was like 97 degrees and we were sprinting up and down the 100-yard field. It was like a football field. And we were doing, I think we did 27 rounds or something. It was brutal. And I said, this humble pie is good for me. It's really, really good for me. But that's, I think, because I have self-belief and because I have a growth mindset. And if I had a fixed mindset, I don't think that humble pie would be nearly as good. And I do think that back in when I did go to WPI, I do think I had more of a fixed mindset back then than I do now. I think it's a spectrum. And you just got to consistently make sure that you have plus, minus, and equal to. Otherwise, you're not going to live in the truth. You're not going to have the full range of understanding.
Well,
because if you make $500,000, thank you, brother. If you make $500,000 a year and you think you're wealthy, trust me, you're not.
Yep.
You're just wealthy compared to people who don't make a lot. And that's okay. We have some mentors, we joked on the last episode, one mentor is like, yeah, I'm broke. It's like, oh no, but I'm not flying. Like, coach. Yeah. It's like he has a $13 million net worth. You're not broke. You're just broke compared to your billionaire friends. Yeah. Right? So it's just interesting.
Next Level Nation, I have been talking about this on my other podcast, Podcast Growth University, where I talk all about podcasting, which I absolutely love. If you're a podcaster and you want to learn more about podcasting, please reach out to me or click the link in the show notes, and we can hop on a free 30-minute call, completely free, no strings attached. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. My ultimate goal is to add as much value as possible from my 1,050 whatever episodes of this, and also being on, at this point, maybe 300 other shows as well. So if that's something you're interested in, I would love to chat. I love meeting the members of our amazing community, and I promise there are no strings attached.
So as of right now, I just crunched the numbers actually while Kev was talking. So I'm very, very grateful at this stage. I was talking about this in the team huddle. I remember 3.5 years ago, I reached out to Amy Diaz, who's now my executive admin, and said, I want to start coaching. I was a fitness coach back then, and I started coaching for free. And we jumped on the phone, I think it was weekly back then, and we did peak performance calls about fitness. And then eventually it evolved. I went from fitness coaching to mindset coaching to peak performance coaching, eventually to business coaching and consulting, and now it's called Next Level Business Solutions. And so as of this past month, I just surpassed finally a dream came true. I was saying this years ago that I wanted to have a six-figure coaching business, and I officially do, which is awesome. And that's only one department at NLU, so obviously we have many other services as well. But as far as my personal coaching, in terms of next level business solutions, we just surpassed that mark. So I just crunched the numbers, 32 clients, if you include relationship talks, 16 person team, which I guide the team and coach the team. And then also we have 10 members of group 7 in group coaching. So right now I'm currently leading and guiding 58 people towards their dreams. Why am I saying all this? If you're a listener of this show, I want to help you succeed. I'm leaning into helping people with success and with achievement a lot more. And while I definitely am not good at many things, when it comes to helping people succeed at a higher level and achieve their goals and their dreams, that it really has been the through line of my entire life. That's what I believe my genius zone is. It's what I love to do, and it's not always fun and it's not always easy, but I'm always glad I did, and I love to see people achieve their dreams. Seriously, it's my favorite thing in the entire world, genuinely. So I'm not going to sell you anything either. If you jump on the phone with me for a half hour, I love to meet our listeners. I promise you I can accelerate. I saw a post once by one of our members of the community. She said, would you pay to have someone accelerate you towards your dreams? And that's really all it is. So let this be the Mario Kart booster. I'm not even going to tell you about my coaching. I'm not going to sell you anything. No pricing, none of that. Like, let's jump on the phone. Let's meet each other. And I will try to give you some more clarity on where you're headed and set up some train tracks so that you can really accelerate towards whatever your goals and dreams are. That's what I love to do, and I hope I get to do it with some more listeners.
And then just for perspective too, there are very few business owners who do that. There are very few business owners, especially, and I mean this very, very humbly, but especially who have as much going on as Alan and I do, that just say, hey, let's hop on the phone for free for 30 minutes, and I'm not going to sell you anything. That is very, 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 very rare. So that's something we always want to do to some degree. As we get busier and busier, obviously it will be harder to do that. But if you've never, maybe you're a new podcast listener, or maybe you don't listen to a lot of other podcasts in this space, that is a very, very rare opportunity. And who knows, you and I might end up talking about dogs and cats, whatever. Who knows what'll happen when we get on the phone. But it is rare and it is valuable, and that's the reason we do it, because most other people aren't willing to do it. A lot of what we do at NLU is based on, well, nobody else is going to do this, so we will do it because we'll just find a way to make it work, and we're consistent enough, and we'll crack our heads against the wall long enough. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I know it sounds like, well, it's free, it can't be that valuable. At the end of the day, most people aren't willing to do it because it eats up a lot of time, but you make the podcast real for us. If you weren't listening on the other end, we wouldn't be able to do this. So we always want to make sure that we are understanding of that, and we are supportive of you, and we want to promise and over-deliver. That's our ultimate goal. So I wanted to add that on at the end. Next Level Nation, tomorrow for episode number 1055. Happy Saturday tomorrow. Where are you holding yourself back right now? I did a Next Level YOU live. So in our private Facebook group, I have been conducting little interviews with members of the community, and I talked to a wonderful young lady named Christy, and that was one of the questions I asked her. So we are going to ask you the same thing. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.